Hey Pittsburgh, it's Megan. Did you know CityCast Pittsburgh is part of a media collective run by Point Park University's Center for Media Innovation? The center is an incredible community resource, and they bring in great guest speakers. Next up is the Wall Street Journal's Jason Riley. He's a columnist and commentator and a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute with a breadth of knowledge about politics, education, social inequality, and so much more. You can see him at the Pittsburgh Playhouse Thursday, March 16th at 7 p.m. For tickets and more info, go to playhouse.pointpark.edu and use code WSJ for BOGO tickets. See you there. Here's what Pittsburgh is talking about. U.S. Senator John Fetterman is a couple weeks into inpatient treatment for clinical depression. But this time of year, after months of cold and gray weather, it's not that uncommon to feel not your best anywhere here in the Burgh. So whether it's seasonal effectiveness or a deeper problem, how do you tell? And how do you help someone who's reached out to you for support? It's Tuesday, March 7th. I'm Megan Harris, and this is CityCast Pittsburgh. Chris Michaels is the CEO of NAMI Keystone PA. They're the local chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Chris, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, Chris, I want to start with the news of the day, which is that Senator John Fetterman has been hospitalized for clinical depression. He's been really public with his struggles with depression before, and I feel like we've all seen aspects of it play out on the news. Can you talk about what sort of stigma can be associated with being so open about something like this?
Yes, there's already colleagues of his thinking that he shouldn't return to his job, to the Senate. And this is on the grand stage. He has stature and everything. And it's the same for someone who's just a local worker. It's the same. It has the same impact. And that's that the stigma is then that you can't do your job, or you're not, something not right about you. You're sickly, you can't function, or you shouldn't be there. And stigma becomes discrimination in terms of what happens when you're stigmatized. Typically, you're discriminated against.
Is it helpful to have someone like Senator Fetterman to look to as an example of a way to approach this, in the work that you do, to be able to say, if someone like him can do it, we're hopeful that you could consider it as well?
Exactly. I couldn't say. You said what I was going to say. He did. He set a wonderful example for everyday people out there, and I think it's more powerful than any piece of legislation he might have proposed. In terms of anything anti-stigma, that those public actions, raise people's awareness. How many millions of people watched the news and saw it?
Yeah.
Very powerful, very, very powerful example he set.
What would you suggest to anyone who maybe watched that example and, feels like maybe it hits a little close to home? Maybe it's something that they've experienced, or, there's a nugget of truth to their life as well. What should they do? What kind of supports are out there? What kind of step can you take?
When people ask us that, the very first thing is tell somebody.
Yeah.
And when we suggest to you, tell, if you're a church person and you have a close relationship there, tell the person there. Tell your minister or priest.
Just get the message out.
Yeah, they'll, at least once you say it to somebody, then it's easier to say it to the next person.
Yeah.
Your primary care physician, they could be very helpful to you. Somebody that you would confide something about your physical health to.
Yeah.
If you had cancer, you might want to talk to your priest or your primary care physician. You would have a conversation. But I think that it's important for people to know that depression and other mental illnesses are highly treatable. You don't have to go inpatient necessarily. A lot of times you seek out a therapist and then maybe a psychiatrist, or psychologist, but if you need medication, then you're talking to a physician,
Hmm.
and ideally that should be a psychiatrist. But primary care physicians, I think, prescribe the majority of antidepressants in this country. So, which is that's fine. That's fine with us, just as long as you're getting care,
And the help you need.
But it is highly treatable. I mean, it's very very common, and you know you're working with people that are on antidepressants. Everybody is, but you don't know it. People are functioning. They have a therapist. They take an antidepressant, and they get up and go to work every day, and nobody really knows that's going on unless they talk about it. So
Exactly. So that's all clinical depression. But I feel like a lot of us here in Pittsburgh, especially, have been feeling that thing that happens every January and February with this cumulative effect of so many months in gray weather just sort of weighs on everybody. Then we get that first hit of 70 degrees and sunshine, and it's just like, what is happening? Why do I feel so different all of a sudden? How do you tell the difference between what you're feeling is like malaise and seasonal versus clinical?
well, true seasonal affective disorder. It's a type of depression, and it follows a cycle of it begins in fall and lasts through like till March, and a lot of people are in that cycle.
How does that science work, that, cycle? Because, like thinking of springtime, for example, we suddenly get all this rain and then a lot of us are feeling climate anxiety. It just all feels like a lot sometimes.
Well, I think everything feels like a lot right now.
You're right.
I mean, like we're a stressed out society. I mean, we're at our max in terms of stress, and
Preach, Chris.
yeah, no, I mean it's true, and it's a lot of it is the aftermath of the pandemic. The pandemic was like a disaster, and the psychology with a disaster, we're following a similar pattern from the pandemic. I mean, we're in a mental health pandemic basically, but there are ways to handle all
Well,
that, and it's
yeah.
the first thing you have to do is you have to recognize that you're in it, that you have to recognize that you're stressed, and a lot of times people don't. They just keep going, and they don't have a sense that they're stressed out, they're anxious. They can't basically name it.
Yeah.
They can't put a name on it. If you can identify it, then you can deal with it, prevent it.
So, what is your advice then? If someone has made that step, come forward and said, I do think I need some kind of accommodation, I need some kind of treatment, I need help. How can we support our neighbors and help destigmatize, whether it's coming professionally, personally, family, neighbor? What can we
Sure.
do?
Oh, I think first of all, have an awareness and listen. Don't feel like you have to give solutions to people, and obviously don't judge them. Encourage them, be supportive. If it's somebody that needs to go to an appointment, they need transportation, or they need somebody to watch your kids. There's always all these little obstacles that make it hard to go take care of yourself. And if you have a good friend or a good neighbor that's supportive, they can help you to remove all those obstacles so you can get to therapy, or you can, get to the doctors. And again, I can't say talk about it enough. We at NAMI, we basically do that for a living. I mean, we talk about it. We talk about what it's like to, be dealing with depression and anxiety. I deal with depression and anxiety. The pandemic was I had a really hard time during the pandemic and the lockdown. I needed a medication increase. I had health problems, and so did my other family members.
Yeah.
And so our house was like really sad. It was a really sad place, and but we got through it. But I learned to talk about it, and I mean I'm the executive director of the organization, and I have a staff of people, and it was meaningful to them that I was able to tell them, and I was able to talk about it with them, and so that opened the door for everybody to talk about how they were dealing with it.
Don't be scared.
So
Just talk.
yeah, just yes, it's not going to be the end of the world. And in fact, if you're right now, if you're running a company or you're supervising a team of people, And there's a gap between employees, how they think their company and their leaders view mental health, and how the leadership does. Leadership thinks they're meeting the needs of their employees and that they're communicating understanding in that. But the employees don't feel that. The employees don't have, that's not what the employees think. But if someone in leadership can talk about experiencing the same problems and getting treatment for, like we're talking about depression, they're getting treatment for depression and anxiety, and this particularly the CEO or
Or a U.S.
upper
senator.
management. Yeah, yes, exactly. That's my point. Yes, that's a very, very strong message that people hear and see and experience it as an employee. Our leader, our company really cares about us.
Yeah. Chris, thank you for sharing all this with CityCast Pittsburgh.
Thank you.
A little more news before you go. At CityCast Pittsburgh, we firmly believe that everybody should be like our local transit infrastructure and never stop working on themselves. Like, for example, the Mon Incline. If you're looking at the hillside from downtown, it's the one on the left. It finally reopened this week after 7 months of upgrades. The original plan had the reopening set for November, but the $8.2 million renovation project took longer than expected. And happy Purim to those who celebrate. If you're looking for some buttery hamantaschen to mark the occasion, we've got a few recommendations for you. Pigeon Bagels in Squirrel Hill has poppy, chocolate, cherry, and raspberry lychee flavors, all certified kosher. And down the street, Allegro Hearth Bakery has apricot, blueberry, poppy seed, and raspberry, all vegan. Or, if you're on the run, Giant Eagle has you covered too. They've got the classic cherry. That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. Don't forget, Governor Josh Shapiro is delivering his budget address today. You can catch the live stream at the link in our show notes, or we'll have the need-to-knows in tomorrow's Hey Pittsburgh newsletter. We'll be back Wednesday morning with more news from around the city. Talk to you soon. Or no shows.